me wise counsel, just facilitating my emotions. And I talked to him until I got to the airport, boarded my plane. He said, baby, how are you feeling? Are you okay?
That's good.
And I said, oh, but I'll be okay. I'll be okay, Dad. So I got home and I went straight to him and he had his Jack and Coke and he said, let's sit and talk. So he was a father, right? And that plays a big difference in how a woman chooses. I'm not choosing out of despair. In all due respect to the women who are fatherless girls, because that's real. That's real. But I'm not choosing out of despair. And before he passed away, I used to call him randomly and say, Daddy, thank you. He go, for what? I said, for not making me a fatherless daughter. And he said, oh, baby, I love you. You're welcome.
That's on
so I never knew life. When I say we had a real marriage, death is what did us part. Nothing else with my father. And so it's important. But really quick, you said something. I love everything you said. I just love. Remember we talked last night when I said, no, Terrence, I'm like, I want that high school kid love.
But let me show you something else, guys. Let me show you something else. I just wanted to show you something.
I've learned in the sense of coming to a place of mental health and coming to a place of a good quality life. So I'll take that any day. But I'm a little girl, product of teenage parents. My father was 16, mom was 15 when they got pregnant. And in the inner city, my dad was a hardcore gangster, dope dealer in the streets. He's a founder of one of the biggest Piru gangs in Los Angeles. My mom was also, a gangster in the streets alongside my father. They were high school sweethearts, met at 10 years old. About 2 years old, when I was 2, my dad went to jail for murder and selling dope. And by the time he got out, he beat his case, thank God. By the time he got out, they told my father my mom was selling A-Tracks. And back then, he thought A-Tracks she's selling A-Tracks, the record albums. She drops him off to a gym to work out, and she takes his car, and she never returns. He calls his brother, and he says, yo, Kim hasn't came and got me. Is she okay? Where's she at? Come to find out, she wasn't selling A-Tracks. My mom was doing the drug that my father was selling. And so as a little girl, coming from that, growing up with a lot of questions of abandonment, and I even was questioning God, saying, I just don't understand, why. And I know for sure, and it's not just kids that question this, adults also question God with certain situations that they have, especially when it comes to being a child who's experiencing abandonment, who grew up to be an adult, who's now experiencing that little boy, little girl in you who's abandoned, me asking God, like, why I'm confused, right? And him explaining to me, baby, the only way I can give you an understanding of why is if I give you the experience. And I said, I'm good, because words don't teach, experience does. And so for me, growing up as the oldest of 7, not having anyone in front of me to witness how to do life, how to get through this, I just went into prayer, supplication, and faith in myself and God, and I became very resilient. And at that point, I understood that life was a journey that was about self-growth, by self, but about making sure that whatever God moves through me, he gives to me. So I want to make sure that whatever's coming out of me, I want to keep, one, and
okay, so the reason why I wanted to discuss this was because something was quite interesting that was happening. I know I sped it up, so I apologize. I sped it up. I forgot that I've gotten the fastest time. But something that she said was really interesting. She said on another video with Dear Future Wife, she said, I didn't grow up, without a fatherless, without a father, right? But the story doesn't seem quite right. And the reason why I said this is when I heard it, I said, this doesn't sound right. Your dad was a drug lord, and your mum ended up becoming a druggie, but also selling drugs. I don't know about y'all, but selling drugs full-time and becoming one of the biggest gangs, if we're going to talk about, obviously, emotional safety and emotional welfare, I guess in my head, maybe I'm judging a little bit. I'm struggling to see how that's going to be emotionally safe for a child, right? You're one of 7 kids. Your father goes to prison, okay, as well, at the same time, for murder, right? I don't know if he did his full time or whether he came out early or whatever. And so that she obviously informs us that she got the abandonment issues, okay? And so when I'm hearing the abandonment issues, I'm going, okay, cool. But then this statement here, and I'll play the clip again, this is what made me think, and I'm not saying necessarily when I say running game, what I mean by that is, I don't think she tells herself the full truth. It feels like, and that could be me judging. And again, I want to be very cautious as well about how I judge people, as well, right? I'm trying to discern the truth, and I feel like something's missing from the truth as to why we're having 4 engagements as well, right?
Hour, 4 or 5 hours of him just giving me wise counsel, just facilitating my emotions. And I talked to him until I got to the airport, boarded my plane. He said, baby, how are you feeling? Are you okay?
That's good.
And I said, oh, but I'll be okay. I'll be okay, Dad. So I got home and I went straight to him and he had his Jack and Coke and he said, let's sit and talk. So he was a father, right? And that plays a big difference in how a woman chooses. I'm not choosing out of despair. In all due respect to the women who are fatherless girls, because that's real. That's real. But I'm not choosing out of despair. And before he passed away, I used to call him randomly and say, Daddy, thank you. He go, for what? I said, for not making me a fatherless daughter. And he said, oh, baby, I love you. You're welcome.
but the brother was in prison for life. I mean, the brother was in prison for murder. And why it sparked me is because she made a differentiation between herself and other women. And I was like, no, baby, you in the same place. Because you've had 4 engagements because of the fear of abandonment, which is coming from mum and dad, right? And you're number 1 of 7, meaning that you had to take on probably some responsibility, and you had to probably look after your younger siblings, and probably had to play a parental role in your household, right? Because the family got scattered when mum obviously scatters and you know, father scatters. Now, of course, it might be later on in her life. Maybe she was 16, 17 when that actually happened. Who knows? Okay. All right. So I don't know the full story of that. So I could be judging prematurely. But it's the way she differentiated herself from the other ways, as if, you know, she's like, and I saw this on the Cam Newton, it actually happened on the Cam Newton interview, I just didn't find the clip, where she separated herself from the other ladies, like saying, you know, it makes a difference when you have a father in your life. And I'm like, but just having a father that's present, but is into the drug game, how present can he be? No, for real. If he's really running the biggest gang of his life, this is not the movies, how present could he be for you? I think it's why, and again, when we go back to talking about attachment issues as well, right? I think she presents herself as a fearful avoidant. That runner track star energy is the same thing that Tyrese's ex-wife had. What's her name? Samantha. Is it Gibson? No, Samantha. Yeah, Samantha. I've got her last name anyway. But same thing again, right? That extreme runner and a track star aspect, right, is coming from a place when you're born in a household of chaos. When you're born in a household that is inconsistent in the parental care, emotional care, right, and you're not sure what you're going to get each day, right? Fearful avoidants tend to be born in those type of environments. And so that runner track star is the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of betrayal, right? It's extreme. It flares itself up. So, I'm not trying to question her reality. I'd rather question that I'm listening to. I'm going, something doesn't seem quite right. Like, you know what I'm saying to you? So when I say running game, what I really mean by that is that I don't feel like you're telling us the full truth. And then when you put yourself at a difference between the ladies and other ladies, I'm like, why would you do that? There's a difference between having a father and you. I'm like, well, baby, if he was in the drug game, it would have been very difficult for him to be there. And that's why I was like, something's not quite right. Does she have and we all have it, by the way. We all have our blind spots. For instance, my own is my grandiose, right? Thinking that I'm very intellectual, I'm very smart, right? It's a grandiose aspect. It's what we call in the area of avoidance tend to do this, where they try to compensate in a sense, right? Because the value that we feel about ourselves, the way that we don't have a very good value of ourselves. And I heard it explained like this way. I think it was by Heidi. She explained it by saying, when the will of a child is broken, right, the worth is also questioned. And so that child's worth now being questioned, okay, we're looking for worth. And so what we'll end up doing is we will make aspects of our ability, skill, traits, attributes, personality, we'll make it grandiose, which is where, again, quote unquote, the narcissistic kind of vibe kind of comes in as well, where you make one aspect of yourself really, really big. Right, for me, it's intellect. Like I want to be the most intellectual person, and think I'm smart enough to be in any room I can be in. You know, even though that's not necessarily true. Right, I have a grandiose aspect, a part of me, and because of that, it's because of compensating for that necessity of trying to find value and worth, and be able to showcase to the rest of the world that you have that. And so, when she separated herself from other women, I was like, are you separating yourself from other women? And when I think about it and I go, then is she really being honest with her authentic self? Is that why we're having 4 engagements? Because we're not actually being authentic with our true self about how we really show up. Because the swearing and everything, okay, cool. But it sounds like you're still gangster, sis. Right? It sounds like we're still GANGSTA. You know what I'm saying to you? So I wonder if that is the aspect that, in terms of relationship, maybe that's why maybe you're having issues with it, because you're still GANGSTA, right? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But maybe that's an aspect that's why we're finding ourselves in that particular position. You know what I mean? So it was just intriguing me to hear it when she differentiated herself. I was like, baby, you can't differentiate. You're in the same boat. Like, you know what I'm saying to you? Like, you're in the same boat.
What am I playing? He said, baby, how are you feeling? Are you okay?
That's good.
And I said, but I'll be okay. I'll be okay, Daddy. You know, so I got home and I went straight to him and he had his Jack and Coke and he said, let's sit and talk. So
That's
he was
good.
a father,
Yeah.
right? And that plays a big difference in how a woman chooses.
That part.
I'm not choosing out of despair. In all due respect to the women who are fatherless girls, because that's real. That's
Yeah.
real. But I'm not choosing out of despair. And before he passed away, I used to call him randomly and say, Daddy, thank you.
See, and that's the part I said, when you said obviously that, you know, I'm not choosing out of despair, I'm going, but are you not? You chose somebody who didn't want to have kids, who you chose somebody at one point that had kids that you didn't want to have kids. You've had 4 engagements and the other one, you know what I'm saying to you, like, so are you sure you're not choosing out of despair? Are you sure you're not choosing out of despair? And that's what I'm saying. See, what I realize also sometimes with fearful avoidance is that if they don't become, if some of them are not, there's an area that they maybe not be aware of where they feel like that they've got it covered when they haven't actually got it covered. So it's like, I'm not choosing out of despair, but baby, look at the choices you're actually making. Look at the people that you've chosen. Now, of course, that's, you know, of course, she's in a better place now, of course. So it was a past we're talking about. But saying that we're not choosing out of despair because you had a dad in your life, no, sis, you were choosing out of despair. And that's why I said it doesn't make sense for her to differentiate itself between herself and these other women. I'm like, sis, you're in the same boat. You would have had daddy and mother issues. Your mother was on drugs. So you would have been looking after yourself, which is where the fierce independence that she has comes from. See, that fierce independence she has is not because of her daddy's love. Although dads do create independent daughters as well because they teach them how to be independent on their own, right? But it sounds like you became that independent because you had to look after yourself. You had to handle things yourself. You had to go through life a lot of times depending on you. You know? So it's just to highlight something. I was like, okay, this is quite interesting. So there may be, and this is to say anybody else as well, I think that many a times, many a times that people don't realize they have a blind spot. Like I told you guys, I didn't realize until way later on that I have a kill switch that was working with me. I said it on Dear Future Wifey. I said, and I only came to that knowledge recently. I was like, whoa, I got a kill switch. Like after 2 years, I just switched off. And it's because I wasn't paying attention to the fact that me, myself, I'm wounded. It's not to do with them. It's me that's wounded and I need to heal that wound. Otherwise, I can only do 2 years or 3 years relationship and then I'm quitting. And so there's a blind spot to me, right? There's a blind spot to me in terms of my own intellect. There's a blind spot to me in terms of my own thinking that I can self-develop. Because one of the things that she may not realize that we are in the same boat, that we're going to have the same issue, me and her, and anybody doing this line of work, anybody doing coaching, life coaching, psychology, and most of us are from trauma backgrounds. And the blind spot that most of us are going to have is that we believe in self-development. And sometimes that self-development that we believe in is actually us hiding because we don't ever feel like we're ever going to be enough. And so we're always striving for perfection, which is good. But there's another aspect, which is that we're perfectionists, always striving so we can't be rejected. And so when that blind spot tends to happen, right, that can be very difficult in relationships. That's what I'm kind of explaining. Because when you go back and I was like, it doesn't make sense what she's explaining if I even play a little bit more.
Too, that whatever it is that I'm able to resolve or understand or whatever pain pockets or trauma I'm able to navigate through, that I do have a duty, an unspoken oath to give that to any human because it's a human right to have mental health and a good quality of life. And so that's my story in a very, very small shell. There's a lot more to it. But, you know, being a broken little girl, when you heal right and when you take the necessary steps to get your trauma in alignment with who you really are, good people come from that. Good people come from that. And so it gave me the ability to see good in people, but be a hybrid and not be naive to, excuse my language, the bullshit that trauma and the inner city and abandonment can create somebody to be if you're not careful with that.
Your parents married?
They were not.
They were together. And do you think that had any type of impact on the woman that you are today?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Well, how though?
Yeah. I love that question. You know, it impacted me in a lot of broken ways, but it impacted me in a lot of really healthy ways. Contrast, which is something most people don't like, really is our best friend. And so I always say as a little girl, no pun intended to everyone who raised me, but I saw a lot of contrast. I saw a lot of who I didn't want to be like. And so what that did was, and this is for the people who don't know where you want to go, don't know who you are, but you know you don't like your environment, you don't like where you're at. This could be at any age. I always say it's not where you're running to that it gets you there. oftentimes is what you're running from. And for me,
And then, so it's interesting because it's my last point because I've got to get off. I'll come back later on today. And this is me. I might be projecting. I may be projecting, so I need to be aware of that. I'm always trying to be aware of this as well, right? That I may be projecting in this moment. She has these little moments that she does here and does also with Dear Future Wifey. If you notice, she breaks the fourth wall. And it's quite interesting because when she's breaking the fourth wall, it's not like she's making a joke per se. Like, you know, like you might make a joke like, hey, yo, like someone does. But she actually talks to the audience as if she's given us something, right? Like she's teaching you something in a moment rather than sitting in the fact that it's about her. If you get what I'm saying to you, like you can teach, like obviously, listen, if I tell you about my life, I can still teach you through telling about my life. But it's the way that she breaks the fourth wall to be able to turn to you and be like, let me preach a little bit to you. And I feel like that shows, and that just me again, I could be projecting. I want to make that very, very clear. That there could be also this aspect of that there may not, although she tells us she's comfortable, she may not be comfortable with parts of herself. Because that breakout is almost like, I'm going to use it as a teachable moment. Like, I don't need to, almost like you're uncomfortable with being judged if you tell the story in its fullness. Just a little thought process that came to me. You know, it doesn't mean that's necessarily the truth. I am not the truth. It is just something that I kind of noticed about it. Because she broke the fourth wall here to tell us about the situation when it's about your parents and what you've seen. And almost like when she felt judged by what Cam's body language was showing, which he was, she had to break the fourth wall to kind of like, I'm going to preach it. And I was like, interesting. Okay. You know, I was like, interesting.
it was me running from my contrast saying, I don't want to be that, or that. I don't know who I want to be at this point. When I was a young girl, I don't know where I'm going, but I put my track shoes on, Cam, tied them up, and y'all may see these really pretty heels on today, but I say it every day, my track shoes will never come off because me running from that has gotten me to a place of, you know, as you said, and thank you, being very educated, to being able to take care of my mother and my family, to being a doctor, to doing things that broke so many generational curses. But it also created a very broken young girl. Which caused me to have to just self-reflect and take inventory on why do I behave like this, and why do I show up like this, and what is it rooted to, what is that associated to?
So I'm going to leave it there. We'll come back a little bit later on. I think there's a lot more we spoke about this yesterday. I think there's a lot more low functioning behaviors that she's trying to fix out is what's causing these issues in relationships, if I'm honest with you. But again, I may be judging her from a place where I don't fully know her full story. And so I want to always be open to that. I want to be gracious to that. I want to say, listen, I'm only going by what I've heard, but it doesn't mean that I know the full story. And if she was to come on here and then explain it, I'll probably have a bit more better understanding. But I feel like there's still a lot more low functioning behaviors that I think she's covering up almost as if like she doesn't do them anymore, but they keep coming up. Okay, they keep coming up because the choices that they've led you to. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we'll talk about this another time. I'll come back a little bit later. We need to talk about the Cardi B situation as well, and the Offset situation, which I'll do a little bit later on, and Corey Hardritt and Tia Mowry as well situation as well. So I'll get into that for you guys a little bit later on as well. Much love, much appreciation. I hope you guys are blessed.